The shuttle landed on Xeron 5 with a violent shake that threw Captain Eric forward. Dust and red sand swirled around him, making the air feel thick and heavy. The planet was harsh. Even from orbit it had looked unforgiving, but nothing could have prepared a human for the reality. Towering mountains of jagged rock pierced the horizon, and the sky was a dark orange, tinged with streaks of black clouds that swirled like smoke from a fire that had burned for centuries. Eric stepped out of the shuttle, his boots sinking slightly into the hot, powdery ground. He adjusted the straps of his armor and took a slow, careful breath. Around him, alien soldiers were already gathering, their forms towering, muscular, and strange. Each one had 4 arms, sleek, chitin-like skin, and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Their movements were fluid but unnerving, and the air around them carried a faint metallic scent, sharp and cold. As soon as he appeared, laughter erupted. A group of Zakari soldiers pointed at him, their voices harsh and guttural. "The human arrives," one hissed, flexing its 4 arms to make itself look even larger. "Is that all they sent?" another scoffed. The mocking tone in their voices made Eric's jaw tighten, but he did not respond. He had been laughed at before. Across countless worlds, humans had always been underestimated. "You will fail," one of them said, stepping closer, its claws scraping the ground. "We can see it already. You are weak." Its voice carried a sharp edge, meant to wound pride. Eric's hands twitched slightly at his sides, but not in anger. In preparation. He surveyed the soldiers calmly. They were impressive, yes, but he had faced worse. On Earth, he had survived desert storms that stripped skin from flesh, frozen oceans that threatened to snap bones, and volcanic craters that burned everything in their path. They saw a human, small and fragile by their standards, but he carried something far stronger than raw muscle. Focus, endurance, and the kind of discipline that years of training in extreme conditions could forge. "Ha!" a soldier yelled again, louder this time. "Do you really expect to finish the trial of strength?" A ripple of laughter went through the group. "You will die before sunrise." The words should have stung, but they didn't. Eric had trained to ignore insults, to let the world see only what it thought it could see. They saw a human, a weak creature. "A joke. That was their mistake." Nearby, in a high balcony carved from black stone, someone watched quietly. Princess Valira, heir to the Zekari throne, leaned forward, her glowing eyes fixed on the human. She had heard whispers about him, a human soldier who somehow survived missions that even the most seasoned aliens avoided. Curiosity had brought her here, though she would never admit it openly. The aliens were mocking him, but there was something different in his posture, something that made her heart beat faster, though she didn't understand why. Eric adjusted his gloves and slowly walked toward the arena where the trial of strength would begin. The path was long and littered with jagged rocks. Red sand shifted under his boots with every step, but he moved with purpose, like a predator walking into its territory. Every laugh, every sneer from the Zekari soldiers seemed to fade into the background. He focused only on the path ahead, the trial that awaited him, and the challenge that could define him. The alien soldiers began warming up, flexing muscles that seemed impossible in number and size. They jumped, lifted grav weights far larger than Eric could even imagine carrying, and roared as if to shake the planet itself. They were confident, arrogant, and sure of their superiority. They did not see the human smile faintly beneath his helmet. Not yet. "Do you really think you belong here, human?" Another sneered, stepping closer, claws scraping the ground with a sharp screech. "You will collapse before the first challenge. Maybe they should send someone who can actually survive." Arik stopped. Slowly, he turned to face the speaker. The alien's 4 eyes glowed with amusement and contempt. Eric said nothing. He didn't need words. The calm in his stance, the way his shoulders relaxed yet his core remained tight, spoke louder than any defiance. The alien blinked, uncertain for a moment, then laughed, thinking the human was intimidated. From the balcony, Princess Valira tilted her head. She felt the subtle tension, the invisible force emanating from Eric. She had seen warriors before, soldiers who carried themselves with pride, but there was a quiet certainty in him that seemed different. She leaned closer, gripping the edge of the balcony. The horn sounded, a deep, resonant tone that shook the ground and echoed across the mountains. The trial of strength had begun. Soldiers leapt forward immediately, racing toward the jagged cliffs that marked the first part of the challenge. Their legs propelled them with terrifying speed, their multiple arms helping them scale walls that would have crushed a human. They were confident, mocking the human even as they ran past him.
Eric took a deep breath and began moving, but not like them. He didn't rush.
He had studied the course, memorized its dangers, and calculated his energy. Every step was efficient, deliberate. He climbed with careful precision, jumping across jagged rocks where a misstep could break bones. He ignored the laughter and insults as if they were wind against his face. The alien soldiers noticed his pace. They laughed at first, thinking he moved slowly.
"Ha! The human trudges!" one called.
"It will take him 10 times longer to reach the first obstacle."
But Eric didn't need 10 times longer. He only needed focus, skill, and determination. Step by step he climbed, using angles and grips that even the aliens hadn't noticed. His endurance was unmatched, the product of years of survival training in environments far harsher than this. Princess Valira's eyes widened as she watched him. Something about the way he moved, the calm, precise, confident way, made her heart skip a beat. He was a human, yes, but he carried himself with the strength of someone who had conquered worlds of fire, ice, and storm. The court had sent warriors of the Zikari who could crush mountains, but this human, he was proving something extraordinary in the first moments of the trial. The aliens ahead began to notice his progress too. Some slowed, confused. Others glanced over their shoulders, their laughter faltering. "How?" one muttered under its breath. "That human. He's fast." Auric reached the first cliff's peak. Breathing steadily, he looked down at the red, jagged terrain and the laughing alien soldiers far below. His eyes didn't flare with triumph. There was no gloating. He simply moved to the next part of the trial, a molten lava field that stretched like a river of fire. The heat was intense, the air thick and smoky, but Eric had trained for environments like this on Earth. As he leapt from rock to rock, avoiding molten cracks, he heard the alien soldiers' laughter faltering into anxious whispers. They had underestimated him, as they always did, and in that moment, something inside him smiled faintly. Princess Valira held her breath. She didn't move from the balcony. She couldn't. This human was doing something no Zikari warrior had done before. He was moving with intelligence, skill, and an inner strength that defied belief. She didn't know him, didn't understand him, and yet she could feel his determination radiating across the arena like a tangible force. By the time Eric reached the edge of the lava field, the aliens were struggling to keep up. Their bodies were powerful, but brute strength alone could not match focus, preparation, and relentless endurance. The crowd of Zikari spectators began to murmur. The mockery faded. Curiosity replaced laughter. Eric paused for a moment, looking up at the balcony where Princess Valira watched. Their eyes met briefly. He offered no gesture, no bow, only the faintest acknowledgement of her presence. She didn't blink. Her gaze stayed fixed on him, as if she were seeing something incredible for the first time. The trial was only beginning, but already the human had started to turn ridicule into respect. The soldiers who laughed at him were beginning to see a different reality, one that would change the way humans were viewed on Zyron, 5 forever.
Eric took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to face the next obstacle.
He didn't need to prove anything to the aliens. He only needed to survive, and to show them that humans, though underestimated, were a force the galaxy could not ignore. The air above the lava field shimmered with heat, making the rocks look like they moved on their own. Eric's boots landed lightly on a jagged rock as molten liquid hissed beneath him. Every step required precision. One mistake, one slip, and he would be burned alive. Yet, he moved with calm confidence, like the lava was nothing more than a dry path. The Zakari soldiers who had sprinted ahead were already struggling. Their multiple arms flailed as they tried to balance on unstable rocks, their heavy bodies bouncing against the terrain. "Look at him!" one gasped, panting.
"The human, he's faster than the climbing squads."
Another shook its massive head. "Impossible! How can he move so easily?" Arik didn't respond. His mind was entirely on the path ahead, calculating distances, testing the rocks for stability, and planning his next leap. He could feel the heat, but it was not a distraction. He had trained for extremes on Earth. Freezing oceans, scorching deserts, and volcanic mountains had prepared him for this. The aliens relied on strength alone. He relied on skill, endurance, and calm. From her balcony, Princess Veliria leaned forward, her eyes wide. Every human she had seen before had struggled on even simple obstacles, but Eric moved as if he owned the terrain. His muscles were taut and efficient, not wasted on showy strength. He appeared light on his feet, yet every motion was powerful. There was grace in his movement, the kind that came from discipline and experience. She couldn't look away. One of the lead Z-Kuray soldiers, a massive figure with dark red skin and glowing amber eyes, tried to leap a wide fissure filled with bubbling lava. He misjudged the distance, and his claws slipped on the rock edge. A roar of frustration escaped him as he barely caught himself. Behind him, Eric observed the fissure carefully. He calculated the trajectory, jumped, and landed perfectly on the other side, his boots barely making a sound against the rock. The molten lava hissed below, but he remained unshaken. The crowd of spectators began murmuring. The laughter that had greeted him at the start of the trial was fading. Confusion and disbelief took its place. Could a human really navigate the trial better than trained Zikari soldiers? "Focus!" Eric muttered under his breath, not to motivate himself. He never needed it, but to quiet the thoughts that threatened to distract him. The trial had many more challenges. Rocks were only the beginning. Grav weights, wall climbs, hidden traps, and a maze filled with shadows awaited. Every step he took now mattered more than the applause or sneers of the aliens. The next obstacle was a series of grav weights, massive stones that hovered slightly above the ground thanks to anti-gravity fields. They were heavier than any human Eric had lifted on Earth, but he had trained with weights far beyond what humans typically used. He grabbed the first stone, his arm straining slightly, and moved it forward with steady power. The alien soldiers grunted, struggling to lift the same stones. Many of them had stopped, leaning against their weights to rest, gasping for air, while Eric pressed on, moving from one grav weight to another with precision and ease. Princess Valira watched in fascination. She had seen warriors of the Zakari race who could lift grav weights with raw power, but Eric's technique was flawless. He didn't waste energy, he didn't strain unnecessarily, and he didn't falter under pressure. It was as if he had discovered a way to bend the rules of strength itself, using brains and skill as much as muscle. "Impossible," one of the soldiers muttered under his breath. "No human can do this." His voice trailed off as Eric passed him, stone after stone, with ease. The trial continued into the maze of shadows, a labyrinth filled with traps, shifting walls, and hidden pitfalls. The aliens hesitated at the entrance, their confidence faltering. They had trained for years for this maze, yet something about it unnerved them. Eric stepped inside without hesitation. Darkness surrounded him, but he could see faint glows from his wrist device, illuminating the safest paths. His mind worked like a machine, calculating angles, avoiding traps, and moving efficiently. A Zikari soldier lunged at a pressure plate, triggering a trap that swung a massive spiked pendulum. The pendulum crushed him against the wall, leaving him stunned. Others hesitated, fearing similar fates. Auric, however, timed his steps perfectly. He avoided every trap, slipping silently past swinging spikes and falling pits. The maze twisted and turned, but he stayed on course, guided by focus and instinct. Princess Valira leaned forward, her glowing eyes following every movement. She felt a strange mixture of fear and admiration. Fear that no human should be capable of such skill, admiration that he had the courage to face it all without hesitation. She could see the sweat on his brow, the effort in his muscles, yet he never rushed, never panicked. The human had mastered fear itself. Outside, the alien soldiers began to lose hope. Their sneers turned into murmurs of frustration. Some tried to catch up, but exhaustion and poor technique slowed them down. Eric's steady pace left them behind. Even the strongest Zikari warriors were forced to pause, panting, unsure if they could continue. Eric reached the heart of the maze, a glowing sigil that marked the halfway point of the trial. He touched it lightly, registering his progress in the system. For the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. The Zikari soldiers had mocked him relentlessly, but now they were the ones struggling to survive the challenges he had mastered. "Unbelievable," a soldier whispered, leaning against a wall for support. "He's a human, and he's faster than all of us." The crowd began to cheer softly, unsure if they were applauding the human or simply stunned by what they saw. Princess Valira's heart raced. She had seen warriors fall to this maze countless times, yet Eric navigated it with a calm determination that made him appear almost untouchable. She leaned back slightly, her mind spinning. No human should be capable of this. And yet, here he was, proving her wrong in ways she could not explain. Eric pressed on, emerging from the maze with his body intact and his mind clear. He had navigated every trap, every challenge, with precision and skill. The alien soldiers who reached this point were already exhausted, their bodies bruised and battered. They looked at him in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a human had passed where they struggled. "Focus and determination," Eric muttered again, quietly, not to inspire anyone, but to remind himself why he trained, why he endured, and why he survived where others failed. He knew this was only the first half of the trial. Greater challenges awaited: the final cliff climbs, the lava rivers, and the last obstacle, which was rumored to test not just strength but courage itself. Princess Valira descended from her balcony, moving closer to the arena. She didn't announce herself. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough to make the soldiers pause. She watched Eric carefully, her glowing eyes fixed on him. There was no fear in him, no hesitation. Only focus. The lead Zikari soldier approached, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. "Human, you have surprised us," he admitted reluctantly. "But the trial is far from over." Eric nodded slightly, acknowledging him without arrogance. He did not need their approval, only their challenge. Every obstacle was another chance to show that humans, though underestimated, were capable of extraordinary feats. The next obstacle appeared ahead, a massive cliff, its surface slick with molten rock and jagged stones. The alien soldiers charged forward, flexing their muscles and grunting, trying to climb with brute force. Many slipped, their claws scraping against rock, while others fell back, exhausted. Eric assessed the cliff with careful eyes, plotting the exact path that would allow him to conserve energy while ascending with speed. Step by step, he climbed. The heat of the rocks was intense, the sharp edges threatening to cut his hands, but he moved with calculated precision. The aliens below struggled, their confidence waning as the human moved higher and faster than any Zakari warrior. Princess Velera's heart pounded in her chest. She had seen champions fall, but this human defied everything she had been taught about strength and skill. Every movement he made was perfect, efficient, and powerful, and yet he was not showing off. There was no arrogance, no unnecessary strain, only mastery. At the top of the cliff, Eric paused for a brief moment, looking down at the exhausted alien soldiers. Their sneers had vanished, replaced with awe and disbelief. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. His goal was clear, and every step had brought him closer to it. He began the descent toward the next challenge, a vast field of molten rivers that tested balance, courage, and endurance. The alien soldiers hesitated, their fear evident. Eric's calm determination was infectious, though. Some of the weaker soldiers began following his path, realizing that strength alone would not carry them through. Princess Veleraira moved closer, her curiosity unshaken. She could feel something extraordinary in this human, something beyond strength or skill. He carried a will that could overcome any challenge, a mind that could see solutions others could not, and most importantly, he refused to be broken by ridicule or doubt. By the time he reached the molten rivers, the alien soldiers were far behind. His steady pace, careful planning, and unmatched focus had given him a clear lead. And for the first time, the audience began to see not a weak human, but a warrior unlike any they had ever known. The trial was far from over, but Eric had already proven one undeniable truth. Underestimation was the first mistake of any alien who faced a human. The rivers of molten rock stretched endlessly before Eric, glowing like a sea of fire under the orange sky. Heat radiated up, scorching the air and making the rocks slick and dangerous. Many Zakari soldiers hesitated at the edge, their confidence faltering as they stared at the deadly path. They had trained for years, yet even the strongest among them seemed unsure of how to cross. Eric, however, took a deep breath and focused. He studied the flows of lava, the way the rocks jutted up at certain angles, the faint cracks where the ground was solid enough to support a step. Every motion, every leap would require precision. There was no room for brute force alone here. One mistake could cost everything. He moved forward, his boots landing lightly on the narrow rocks. The heat was intense, but he had trained for extremes far worse than this. Cold storms on Earth, with winds that could snap trees in half, had hardened him. Volcanic mountains had burned his skin, yet he survived. This, he thought, was just another obstacle. Behind him, the alien soldiers struggled. Their forearms, which had once been a symbol of superiority, now made balancing on the narrow rocks more difficult. Some slipped, scrambling to grab hold of the edges, their claws scraping the surface. Others hesitated entirely, afraid of the molten death waiting below. Their arrogance had vanished, replaced with fear and frustration. Princess Veleraira leaned forward from the balcony, her glowing eyes following every step. She had seen warriors fall here before, but Eric moved as if the rivers were solid ground. His movements were calm, measured, and precise. There was a rhythm to his pace, a steady confidence that made even the molten rock seem harmless. She couldn't look away. A soldier ahead slipped and fell, landing hard against the edge of the river. A chorus of gasps echoed from the audience. Others began to murmur in disbelief as Eric passed them, hopping from rock to rock with a speed and grace that seemed impossible for a human. Every move was calculated, efficient, and powerful, yet he did not strain unnecessarily. "Impossible!" one Zakari muttered, leaning on his arms for support. No human could do this. He had learned long ago that words meant nothing in the face of action. His focus was on the rocks, the path, and the rhythm of his body. Each leap, each landing, brought him closer to the other side. Finally, he reached solid ground, away from the rivers. Sweat dripped down his forehead, but he did not falter. The alien soldiers were still behind, many struggling to make even a third of the distance. He paused briefly to catch his breath and observe his surroundings. Ahead lay the final obstacle, the last cliff climb. It was steep, jagged, and overlaid with dangerous rock formations that jutted out like spikes. The peak seemed almost impossible to reach, yet it was the final test of the trial of strength. The lead Zekari soldier grunted in frustration as he struggled to climb. How is he still moving like that? He muttered under his breath. His voice carried a mix of disbelief and fear. Other soldiers echoed his thoughts, unsure how a human could continue so relentlessly. Arik moved toward the cliff with steady determination. His focus was unshakable. Every step was deliberate. His hands gripped the rock firmly, his arms pulling him upward while his legs pushed with controlled power. He avoided loose rocks that could give way, tested each ledge for stability, and adjusted his grip instinctively. Princess Valira leaned closer, unable to tear her eyes away. The human's endurance, precision, and skill were unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Every movement was deliberate, every breath controlled. He was not just strong, he was disciplined, resilient, and completely fearless. Some of the alien soldiers were already halfway up the cliff, but their movements were panicked. They rushed, trying to make up lost time, but their haste caused them to slip. One soldier fell back several feet, landing hard on the ground below. Others hesitated, unsure of the safest path. Eric, by contrast, moved steadily upward, never rushing, never panicking. "Focus," he whispered to himself, just enough to steady his mind. The word had become his mantra, his guide through the impossible challenges of the trial. Step by step, he climbed. The cliff was steeper than it looked, the jagged rocks threatening to cut his hands with every grip. Sweat poured down his body, his muscles ached. But he pressed on. The Zekari soldiers below struggled to keep up, their confidence fading with every passing moment. They had mocked him at the start, laughed at his human form, and assumed he would fail immediately. Yet here he was, surpassing them all. At one point, a large overhang blocked his path. The rock above jutted out sharply, and any misstep could result in a fall. Eric assessed the situation quickly. Using his legs to push off the cliff wall at precise angles, he swung his body upward and around the overhang, landing safely on a narrow ledge above. The maneuver was risky, but his training allowed him to move with exact precision. The alien soldiers gasped as they watched him. No human, they thought, could have made that leap. Some tried to mimic him, but their heavier frames and lack of precise timing caused them to slip or stumble. Princess Valeria's heart raced as she watched. Every move Eric made proved what she had begun to suspect. Humans were far stronger and more capable than her people had ever believed. She had come to the trial curious, thinking it would be amusing to watch him fail. Now she was captivated. Every step he took, every obstacle he overcame, made her more certain that this human was extraordinary. Arik reached the final stretch of the cliff. Only a few feet remained to the top, yet the climb was the hardest. The rocks were sharp, and the incline nearly vertical. Sweat stung his eyes, and his arms trembled slightly under the strain. But he pressed on, gripping the rock with a determined resolve. The alien soldiers who had made it this far were exhausted, their movements slow and awkward. Some paused to catch their breath, their faces twisted with frustration. They could not believe what they were witnessing. The human, the one they had mocked and underestimated, was not only surviving, he was surpassing them all. Step by step, Eric climbed. He reached out for the final ledge, his hands finding the grooves in the rock. With a final powerful push, he hoisted himself over the edge and stood at the peak. The sun, though dim in Zyron, Five's sky, caught the sweat on his armor, making him glisten as if he were a warrior forged from light itself. Below, the alien soldiers stared up at him in stunned silence. The cheers they had imagined would follow their own victory were replaced with awe and disbelief. The laughter, the mockery, they had all vanished. Arik had broken through, unshaken and undefeated. Princess Valira descended from her balcony and approached the arena, her gaze locked on him. "Human," she said, her voice calm but filled with wonder. "You have done what no Zikari warrior has done. You have conquered the trial of strength with a skill, determination, and courage that surpasses even our best. Tell me, how do you do it?"
Auric did not answer immediately.
He stood at the top of the cliff, breathing steadily, sweat dripping from his brow. He looked at the alien soldiers below, then at Princess Valira. "Focus," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "Endurance, training, and the will to keep going when others laugh at you. That is all it takes." The princess nodded slowly, her eyes filled with respect. The alien soldiers below, once mocking and arrogant, now looked at him with admiration and a hint of fear. The human they had underestimated had proven them all wrong. Eric descended carefully from the cliff, helping those who struggled along the way. His strength was not only physical, but also in his leadership and his willingness to inspire others through action, not words. Soldiers who had mocked him now followed his example, learning that discipline and focus could overcome brute strength. By the time he reached the base of the cliff, the trial of strength had ended for him.
The record set for the trial, previously held by a legendary Zikari warrior, had been shattered in record time. The crowd erupted in awe and respect, and even the most skeptical soldiers found themselves bowing, humbled by what they had witnessed.
Princess Valira stepped forward, her presence commanding the attention of all. "Human," she said again, "you have not only completed the trial, but you have done so with a skill and courage none of us could imagine."
"You have earned respect beyond measure." Eric nodded quietly, accepting her words but knowing that his journey was far from over.
He had proven that humans were capable of greatness, even in a galaxy that often underestimated them. But more challenges awaited, more battles to be fought, and more opportunities to show that underestimation was a grave mistake when faced with determination, skill, and willpower. The alien soldiers, once mocking him, now followed his lead in small ways, learning that strength alone was not enough. They began to see humans not as weak, but as resilient, clever, and unstoppable when pushed to their limits. Princess Valira watched as he moved through the arena, quiet and calm, yet powerful in every motion. She knew she had witnessed something extraordinary. This human had not only broken records, he had broken prejudices, shattered expectations, and shown the galaxy that humans were a force to be reckoned with. Auric stood at the center of the arena, the cheers of the crowd still ringing in his ears. The air smelled of heat, dust, and the faint tang of alien metal. His armor was scorched and streaked with sweat, but he stood tall, unbowed, and calm. The once mocking alien soldiers now looked up at him with awe, their previous arrogance replaced with respect and disbelief. Princess Valira descended slowly from her balcony, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The murmurs of the spectators quieted as she approached. Even the soldiers, hesitant and exhausted, fell silent. There was a weight to her presence that demanded attention, yet she moved with grace, her gaze unwavering. "You have done what no one thought possible," she said, her voice steady but laced with admiration. "You have surpassed our greatest warriors and conquered the trial of strength, not through raw power alone, but through skill, focus, and determination." Auric nodded, acknowledging her words. "I did what I had to," he replied simply. "I trained for this, and I stayed focused. That's all any soldier can do." "Few humans possess such discipline," she said. "Even fewer could perform under pressure like this. You have earned not only my respect, but the respect of all who witnessed your trial today." The alien soldiers shifted uncomfortably. They had laughed at him hours ago, mocking his small human frame and assuming he would fail immediately. Now they were silent, humbled by what they had seen. Some of them lowered their heads in quiet acknowledgement. A few approached him cautiously, unsure how to address someone they had once scorned. One of the older soldiers, a veteran named Kral, stepped forward. His amber eyes met Eric's, and he extended a clawed hand.
Human, you've proven that strength is more than muscles, he said. Your courage, endurance, and focus are unmatched.
You have shown us what true skill means. Arik accepted the gesture, shaking the alien's hand firmly. Thank you, he said.
It's not just me.
Every soldier has to face challenges. It's the effort that counts.
Princess Valira observed silently, clearly impressed by his humility. She had seen many warriors boast of victories, flaunt strength, or demand recognition, but Arik carried none of that arrogance. His victory was complete, yet he remained grounded, focused on the task rather than the praise. Captain Arik, she said, addressing him formally, I want you to understand the impact of what you have done. Humans are often underestimated across the galaxy. Your performance today will change the way my people, and perhaps others, see your species. You have shown that humans are clever, resilient, and capable of greatness beyond imagination. Arik's eyes met hers, and for the first time a faint smile touched his lips. I don't need to change anyone's mind, he said. I only need to prove what's possible when someone refuses to give up. The Zekari soldiers, once mocking him relentlessly, now followed his example. They began sharing techniques, asking for guidance, and observing his methodical approach. His calm efficiency became a lesson in itself. The human had demonstrated that victory came not from brute strength alone, but from focus, skill, and relentless determination. Princess Valira stepped closer. Would you allow me to observe your training methods? She asked. There is much my people could learn from you, if you are willing to share it. I train the way I must to survive and excel. If sharing it can help others improve, I have no objection. Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile.
Good. Then perhaps we can learn from each other. She paused, scanning the arena.
The trial of strength has always been a measure of physical might, but you have shown us the value of intellect, courage, and determination. You have rewritten what it means to be strong. The alien soldiers around them murmured again, but now in admiration. Kral, the veteran soldier, nodded solemnly. Humans are more formidable than I ever imagined, he said quietly. Captain Arik has proven that to all of us. Arik looked around at the exhausted, humbled soldiers and said simply, It's not about being the strongest. It's about doing what you must, even when others doubt you. Strength is useful, but courage and focus can make the impossible possible. Princess Valeriya studied him carefully. She could see the quiet determination in his eyes, the way he carried himself even after facing death, exhaustion, and ridicule. She had witnessed champions fall under pressure, yet Arik stood unshaken, his mind and body perfectly synchronized. There was something almost inspiring about him, something that spoke to the best of humanity and the potential that lay within. The crowd of spectators had grown silent in reverence. This human had done what none of their greatest warriors had accomplished. The arena, which had begun with laughter at his expense, now echoed with awe. Whispers spread among the spectators. He is human. And yet, incredible. Arik took a deep breath, letting the moment sink in. This was more than a personal victory. It was a statement, a proof that humans could survive, excel, and surpass even the most formidable aliens when they refused to be broken by fear or mockery. He had earned not just victory, but respect across species and cultures. Princess Valira stepped closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. The warmth of her touch was unexpected but grounding.
You have changed my perspective,
she said softly. And perhaps the perspective of many others. Humans are more than they seem. Arik nodded, appreciating the sentiment. We are what we train to be, he said. We show our strength not just in battles, but in how we approach every challenge. The Zekari soldiers began to regroup, some approaching him hesitantly, others bowing slightly as a sign of newfound respect. The mockery, the laughter, the disdain, all had vanished. In its place was admiration, curiosity, and a willingness to learn from someone they had once deemed weak. Crow spoke again, this time addressing the entire group of soldiers.
"Let this be a lesson," he said, his voice carrying authority. "Do not judge by appearance alone."
Skill, courage, and determination can surpass brute strength. We have witnessed it today, and we must remember it, always. The soldiers nodded solemnly, absorbing the truth in his words. Even the youngest recruits looked at Eric with awe, seeing him not just as a human, but as a warrior who had redefined what it meant to be strong. Princess Valira stepped back, her glowing eyes sweeping across the arena. She watched as Eric helped the struggling soldiers, offering guidance and support. His victory was not just personal. It was a lesson, a demonstration of the human spirit. She realized that strength could be measured in many ways, and courage often outweighed brute force.
"Captain Eric,"
she said again, her voice carrying clearly across the arena, "your actions today will be remembered for generations. You have shown that humans are a force to be respected. You have proven that determination, skill, and courage can surpass even the greatest expectations. You have rewritten what it means to be strong." Eric nodded humbly. "I only did what was necessary," he said. "If it inspires others, then that is a bonus." The crowd erupted into applause, cheers, and even a few shouts of admiration. The laughter that had once greeted him was gone. He had earned something far greater than amusement. He had earned respect, not only from the soldiers, but from Princess Valira herself. As the sun began to set on Xiron, 5 casting long shadows across the arena, Eric looked around. He had proven his point, shattered the record, and shown the galaxy what humans were capable of. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. Challenges would continue, battles would come, and prejudices would persist. But now, he had shown that humans, though underestimated, were capable of greatness that could rival even the strongest of alien races.
Princess Valira approached him one final time.
"You have not only broken records but barriers," she said quietly.
"You have shown us that courage and determination matter as much as strength. I hope this is only the beginning of what humans can teach us." Eric nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "Then we will continue," he said, "not for glory, not for recognition, but to show what is possible when we refuse to give up." The alien soldiers, once laughing and mocking, now looked at him with a new understanding. The princess's presence and approval reinforced the lesson. Strength was not just physical, and courage could redefine the limits of any species.
Eric walked from the arena, surrounded by soldiers eager to learn from him, and watched as the glow of the molten rivers faded into the twilight.
He had faced ridicule, overcome impossible challenges, and proven that determination, focus, and courage could outmatch even the greatest strength. And as the stars of Xiron, 5 began to twinkle in the darkening sky, he knew one thing for certain. Humans, though often underestimated, were a force the galaxy could not ignore.
He had turned mockery into respect, doubt into admiration, and fear into inspiration.
In that moment, Eric felt the quiet pride of a soldier who had not only survived but excelled, who had not only proven himself but had shown the universe that humans, though small in stature, could achieve greatness beyond imagination. The story of the human who conquered the trial of strength would spread across Xiron, 5, and beyond. Alien soldiers would whisper it in barracks, princesses would remember it in royal halls, and the galaxy would come to realize that underestimating humans was a mistake that could never be repeated. And somewhere in the crowd, Princess Valira watched him train, quietly learning from the human who had turned ridicule into legend, understanding that true strength was as much about the mind and spirit as it was about muscle and power.